So, hi everyone. I'd like to welcome you tonight. And we're going to be discussing 10 facts that you should know when we're discussing preparing for college, getting ready, the application process, the financial aid process, and everything that as high school parents, you and your child should be thinking about. My name's Vicki Vollweiler. I'm the founder of College Financial Prep, where we focus on everything financial aid related, college planning, all the financial aid applications, scholarships, merit-based aid, need-based aid, student loans, and also those difficult situations that some families, tend to face. Life happens, and I'm here to help.
And I'm Eleanora Ferrante. I'm the founder of Square Peg Square Hole Coaching. I'm an independent educational consultant, so I help students with the college application process. So while Vicki is outstanding at the financial aid, if I never had to touch it again, I'd be happy. And so I would do most of the other piece of it, with the exception of SAT prep. I help students understand who they are and how they can use that information as they're applying to college. And to Vicki's point, we're going to touch on 10 points. There are probably 150 that we could go over today, right? But we'll start with some of the basic ones and we'll walk our way through that. I'm going to ask if anybody has questions along the way, feel free to throw them into the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. If you're not comfortable putting them out there for everybody, you can change the two from everyone to either myself or to Vicki, and we will make sure that we answer questions. And there will be time for Q&A at the end. So Vicki, shall I start?
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to start with a phrase that many of you have heard over the years, and I'm sure if you are anywhere in my age range, and I will not give that away, right, you've heard the term safety school. Well, I'm here to tell you there's no such thing anymore, and we've taken that out of vocabulary. And the reason for that is that these days there are so many kids applying to so many schools that it's just sheer volume, right? And the number of applications at some of these schools that many of us in past years might have said were, oh, not so difficult to get in. Maybe they wouldn't have been targeted as a safety, but you would have said, oh, it's not so hard. So for instance, when I was a kid, Northeastern had an accept rate of about 40%, maybe even a little higher. As of this week, they've had close to 100,000 applications. Oh my goodness gracious. I don't even know how they're reading them, right? It's not physically possible to me. Right? And so when you look at a school like Northeastern, last year, their acceptance rate was 7%. That's crazy, right? So there are schools that are easier to get into in the sense that they have a higher acceptance rate, right? But I wouldn't even tag those as safety schools, because one of my students this year, he just got into University of Michigan for engineering. Really tough program, really hard to get into. We were like, woo, we were all doing the cheers and the dances around the house. He did not get into a school with a 50% accept rate. He was outright denied, not even deferred. And he called me up and he was like, what? Completely confused by the whole thing. He said, because they didn't think you were going to come. So schools are really worried about this thing called yield, right? And so acceptance rate is the percentage of students that the school says, yes, come in. Yield is the percentage of students that have been accepted that say yes. And schools are really concerned about that number. So take the vocabulary of safety school out, and maybe you can talk about a fairly likely school to get into. Vicki, I'll pass the baton to you.
Okay, so my first point that I want to discuss is how everyone, regardless of their income, regardless of their assets, should file the FAFSA application. And a lot of people think, no, I earn too much money. Why should I bother to do that? And I'm going to tell you why. So first, yes, there is need-based aid out there. But just supposing that your family doesn't need need-based aid per se, wouldn't qualify. Maybe your household earns $1 million, but you want your child to have skin in the game, so to speak, and take out those student loans. You have to file the FAFSA application for the student to be able to take out the student loans. Say your child wants to apply to be part of a work-study program. You do that through the FAFSA application as well. If a parent is going to need the Parent Plus loans, even if you don't want your child to have a loan, you still need for the child to fill out the FAFSA application, or parent and child, to submit the FAFSA application for the parents to take out the Parent Plus loans. Also, there are some schools, it's not every school, but some schools want to see that you're applying for need-based aid before they give you merit scholarships. I mean, they'd rather, if a family is going to qualify for need-based aid, they'd rather you get money from the government than from the school itself first. So, there are some schools, they want to see that you're applying for all aid before awarding the scholarships. So just lots of reasons to apply. Also, there are some schools that are $80,000 a year. Not everyone, even if you don't qualify for traditional need-based aid through FAFSA, some of the schools will understand that, a regular family may need some help too. So again, very important to fill out those financial aid applications.
Yeah, and Vicki, to that point also, when you said in the beginning about things may change. So I had a student this year, parents like, I don't want to do FAFSA, I don't want to do FAFSA, but knowing what you've always said about how important it is, I insisted that they fill out the FAFSA, and dad got laid off at Christmas. So they're a family of 4 working on a part-time income from the mom right now. That's a major shift. And they have 3 kids that are all in high school at the same time, which means they will have 3 kids in high school and college at the same time. And so it's a bad space.
And the other thing that everybody should know is you have to fill out those, assuming you do, the applications get completed yearly. It's not just a once and done, because, to Eleanor's point, somebody could get laid off. They may have a fabulous job next year. Finances are always changing. So they want you to fill it out yearly. So
next point, we'd be talking a little bit more about schools again, right? The one thing I hear all the time is I need my kid to go to the best school. What does U.S. News and World Report say about schools? Well, honestly, I don't care. And it's nice to see that Harvard doesn't really care anymore, and that a lot of Yale doesn't really care anymore. And a lot of schools are saying, we don't care anymore, right? And the reason for that is because the rankings are based on very convoluted numbers, right? So a big portion of it is, how does my peer institutions, how do they rank me? How do they see me? Well, I don't know about you, but there aren't a lot of people I know out there that are going to rate their competitors higher than themselves. Right. And that's a big chunk of that of the rankings. It also takes into account a lot of information that the school has to self-report. And we did see last year and the year before that not every school is so upfront about it. They are also looking at things that aren't really as important to the kids. Right. So it's not about how that major will fit the kid or how the extracurriculars will fit the student. Right. It's really very college-based as opposed to focused on the student. When you talk about faculty, how much faculty is getting paid, all sorts of things, it doesn't make any sense. So really what we want you to do is to stop thinking about the idea of what are the best schools out there, right? And what are the best schools for my child? And the best schools for your child are the ones that are going to have the major they want, with the extracurriculars they want, with the environment that they want, in a location that they want, where they are going to flourish and be engaged. So that might mean they need to be at a huge public university. It might mean they need to be a really small liberal arts school. It might mean they need to be at a local school, or they might need to be across the country, right? But it has nothing to do with the rankings of the school, right? Harvard can only take this many kids, and I can't even wrap my arms around how many students there are out there. And Harvard is not the right place for everybody, because if you want to be an engineer, you don't want to go to Harvard. Just going to throw that out there. So even though it's a phenomenal school, it is not the best school for every student. So think about that. Where is the place that your child is going to feel most comfortable? And a great way to be able to gauge that is first to look at the majors. I've had kids say to me, I want to apply to such and such schools. And I go, they don't have that major. Okay, problem number one. The other piece is you want to get on the campuses and get a sense of what it feels like there. So fortunately, we are back to doing college visits, right? For a period of time, it was really hard to do that. And I'm not saying you have to visit every school, but for those of you that are in a location where there are a lot of local colleges, you should get them on those schools and get them a sense of what does it feel like. Even in 9th and 10th grade, drive them through the campuses. You don't have to do an official tour. Just let them see what a college campus looks like. I can't tell you how many kids come to me. They are like junior year, beginning to middle, and they had never stepped foot on a college campus. And I go, what do you want in college? They go, I don't know what it feels like, right?
So to your point, there's somebody asking a question. So what if they choose a major and it changes later, that they don't want to deal with their child transferring from place to place? Now, I mean, I could speak from this just from my own child. 3 different majors. He still graduated from the same college in the 4 years. It's all good. You know, if you're concerned, my advice, and really this is yours, Eleanor, but my advice as a mom, you know, if your child is uncertain, go to a college that has a lot of offerings, so that way they can find themselves in what they're interested in.
Right. And that doesn't mean you have to be at a Penn State with 40,000 other undergraduates to be able to figure that out, right? You can go to Hofstra, and Hofstra's got, and you know, it's got health sciences, engineering, business, liberal arts, you name it. And it's a nice size school, right? So you don't need to be at a big school in order to get all those different opportunities, right? That being said, if your kid has a sense that they really want STEM, make sure it's stronger in STEM, right? Even if they're not sure which is the exact program that they want. Vicki, back to you. I feel like I'm on the news radio. News show.
So I'm going to kind of tie into everything you were just saying with my next point. And my point is to plan early to find more money. So the savings really begins with the colleges that your child is applying to. So you want to make sure, in addition to being the academic fit and the social fit and having the right programs, you want to make sure that those schools are also going to be financially friendly. The schools typically are the ones that give out the largest amount of merit aid. You know, we talk about scholarships. It's not the private scholarships where you're going to find the most money. It's going to be from the schools themselves. So sometimes, a lot of times, kids will apply to a list of colleges that they make up, and the parents say, well, we'll figure it out at the end and, you know, see how the money works out. Well, I'm saying let's flip that model. Make sure that you can afford the colleges that your child is applying to.
Mhm.
And then there's a great list and you know what you're working with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get that a lot from parents. They'll say, well, we'll figure it out afterwards. And
Right.
that's terrifying to me. Right.
Right, exactly. You know, schools can cost upwards of $80,000 a year. You know, you should know going in. And just because the sticker price is $80,000 a year doesn't mean that that's what the price will ultimately be for your family. But it's important to, you know, consider everything going on and, you know, specific to your household and income and assets and dynamics and whatnot, to know what those prices will likely be.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
and
and it doesn't have to be only applying to state schools, you know, in-state universities. It's possible for private universities to be the same or even less.
so, and to that point, one of my students this year, he's a senior, he applied to a number of liberal arts colleges, and he got the school itself costs, final cost to attend, including, you know, not just tuition, but everything. Room and board was about 75, and he got 40,000 in merit aid. The parents also were
Fabulous.
jumping up and down, right? Right.
Fabulous.
And it's not like he lowballed himself in terms of a school. It's a great university for him, but it's a small liberal arts college. It's exactly the right fit for him, right? And he's very excited to be going off there. It's going to come in lower price than going to a state university.
And let me say this, there's a client that I worked with. She happens to be divorced and her child only wanted to apply early decision to Syracuse. You know, we made sure to run those numbers before applying early decision. It's very, very important because, you know, especially with early decision, that's that binding contract.
And
So,
right, and that's a great point, because there are a number of different application for people to consider. I'm just going to ask you, if you haven't put your microphone on mute, if you can make sure you're doing that, 'cause I hear a little bit of feedback. But there are 4 main ways that students can apply to college in terms of application process. So Vicki's point, the first one is early decision. Right? Those are for those kids who really know that this is the school they really want, and that if they never hear from the rest of their colleges, their decisions, they will be fine with it. They also have to be comfortable being able to pay the full sticker price in case they don't get any money. And that to me is always a little scary, right? But every year I do have 1, 2, sometimes 3 kids who their parents are comfortable making that financial decision. But keep in mind, the student has to sign off on that. The parent has to sign off on that. The guidance counselor has to sign off on it, right? It's a lot of people saying, we understand what we're committing to. The upside of that is that early decision acceptance rates tend to be higher because they know you're going to come. So getting back to that idea that about yield, right? Early decision yield is basically 100%, right? There are a few outs, but it's very slim. So a lot of schools have trended more and more towards that, like Tulane in recent years has really gone very strong on early decision, right? A high percentage of their incoming classes that way. A lot of schools which weren't early decision before are now. Back in the day when my son applied to Boston College, it was early action. Now it's early decision. And the difference there is that early action, you apply early, same kind of deadlines usually as early decision. However, it's not binding. So you get to see all of your offers. You get to go through them and decide which is the school that is the best academic, social, financial fit for me. Gives you the time to think about it. I have a preference towards that because having worked with enough high school students, I know that they change their shoes every 10 minutes sometimes as they're getting dressed. How are they supposed to know for sure which is the school that's right for them? Right. And so I think it puts a lot of pressure on them early in the cycle. But if you do have kids who know what they want, it can be a good option. The last one that most people think about is regular decision in terms of how to apply. That's later in the cycle. Some schools, you don't have a choice. It's all they offer. So UConn, Stony Brook, they only offer a regular decision. Basically, that means you apply usually around January 1st or by February 1st, and then you'll hear on April 1st what the choices are. Vicki, there are some downsides to regular decision, though, financially. Right?
Yeah, you're waiting later on. There's less opportunities for finding that free money. You know, it's important to apply for FAFSA as early as possible. My suggestion, no matter what, just, you know, be certain to include all of the schools, even the ones that are going to be later. So that way you have the opportunities for any need-based aid, any merit-based aid that the schools will offer. But typically, yeah, they may offer more to those that apply early action.
Because they know you're interested. They know that's the place that you want to be. Right. So, you know, when you think about it, the different types of ways in, a lot of people go, oh, well, I see on the Common App that it says that this school is rolling admissions. What does that mean? Basically, like as you apply, they let you know if you've gotten in. And sometimes those rolling admission dates are really far out. I mean, if you look at Marist last year, it was July. Well, I hate to tell you, probably not really going to get into Marist if you wait until May or June or July to apply. Right. So even though it says that on the Common App, you really want to look carefully at the applications and make sure you're getting in under the early action, early decision, regular decision deadlines.
Now, I'm going to say this just as a mom again, and having gone through it. Ideally, if possible, try to have your child do as much as possible Labor Day, September, because then they're taking all those AP classes. So they're writing essays, they're studying for their classes. It's hard. The sooner you can get it all done.
Yeah, and the students I work with, I have a lot of kids that are done by October.
Fabulous.
And if you're applying to schools in the South, you have to be done by October because Clemson, the UNC Chapel Hill, they all have October deadlines. So if you're not in by then, and if you're going for a really special program, so I had a young lady this year, she wanted to do nursing and she wanted to do Clemson. She was so early getting her stuff in that her guidance counselors hadn't even settled in yet into the school year. And they're like, wait, I need to give you what? Transcripts, this, that. She's like, she was done. Like as soon as the Common App refreshed in August and she had everything in, all of her supplementals were done by the end of August because she knew that those programs are going to be tough. And guess what? She's at Clemson and she's going to get some nice money.
Fabulous. Yeah. So I'm going to dive into the next point, and it's about having a good understanding of student loans. So if you are going to need student loans, listen up. So a lot of people are under the misconception that, oh, my child wants to go to an $80,000 a year school. Well, that's on them. And it just doesn't work that way. Freshmen can only take out up to $5,500 in student loans. Sophomores can take out $6,500 and juniors and seniors can take out $7,500. The rest, you know, then what? the parents can take out parent plus loans. Parents can take out private loans. The kids can take out private loans with a cosigner, which is typically mom and dad, so it's still all coming back to the fact that the kids just can't do it all on their own. If they're staying local and living at home, yes, it may be possible, but not living on campus anywhere. So I just want the parents to, everybody to be aware that parents do have to have some responsibility in this.
Mhm. And to that point too, I think you shouldn't discount living at home. It may not be the college experience that everybody thinks their kid needs, but they don't all need it. Every kid is different, right? And so you really have to know who your child is and what's the best fit for your own child, right? Some students being away from mom and dad is instrumental in maturing, becoming an adult, learning all those things that they need to learn. For others, they would much prefer to go to a university that it's not going to cost them as much, so they don't have those student debt after the fact. Right? And I will say this, some of you know the story with my own kids, right? So going to Boston College for my son, every month when I was on that payment plan, I was paying anywhere between $6,000 and $7,000 a month from when it started to end. $1,000 a month, right? That's a lot of money. My daughter, on the other hand, goes to Stony Brook and lives at home. I pay her entire tuition on my credit card and I do not max it out. Right? It cost me not even $6,000 a semester. That's a huge difference.
Let me jump in with that. So there are clients that I work with, and I don't know if anyone is familiar with the Excelsior Scholarship. I'm not even sure who on this call is from New York or not from New York. But for those in New York, the Excelsior Scholarship applies to households that earn less than $125,000. It's possible for a child to receive the Excelsior Scholarship and go to school tuition free and live at home. And, you may need to pay a couple little fees and for books, but college would basically be free. So that's wonderful for those that, would be interested in that.
Right? So things to think about. One of the other pieces to think about is when you're looking to get money, like a lot of people well, what are those key ways to do it? And one of the things that a lot of people have kind of walked away from, and it's interesting to me these days, like everybody's thinking that all the schools are test optional. Test optional, test optional, test optional. And while there are 1,800 schools that are test optional, there are 4,000 schools, right? So, but 18,000 are officially test optional. About 80 of them are test blind. So test optional means if you send a score, they will accept it and they will look at it. Test blind means if they send a school, if you send a score, they're not looking, right? It's something they do not want. They're not even paying attention to. A little side note on that, UCLA, all the University of California schools, they are test blind, but you still put your SAT or ACT score on their application. Just saying, throwing that out there, right? So a couple of reasons that you might want to actually submit a test score, right? So if that score is good for that school, then that can help you in terms of getting in, because it's a good data point. It can help you in terms of getting into an honors program. It potentially could help you in terms of getting money. There are still schools out there that say this GPA, this test score yields this much cash.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely. Always, I always encourage clients, always encourage your kids, especially if they're good test takers, to take the test.
Right. Right. And keep in mind that a good score is relative to the school. So I have some students with an 1,100, 1,000 on their test, and we still send it to schools. And I have other students with a 1,400 that we don't send it to schools because it depends on the school. I'm not going to send a 1,400 to an Ivy. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm not, right? But I will send 1,000 to Lynn University, right? So you have to really understand the school and what they're looking for from your kid. And there are schools that are requiring tests again, and some never gave them up. So if your kid has an interest in Florida, and I think almost every student I work with these days, I want to go to Florida, right? So all the Florida publics require a test score. If your child wants to go to Georgetown, UGA, they require test scores. If they want to go to Georgia Tech, MIT is back asking for test scores. They gave it up and then they said, no, it's a really good predictor of how well you're going to do at MIT. So now they're asking for them again, right? So you should always have your child take the test. And even if they're not good test takers, have them take it, see how it works for them. Either the ACT or the SAT, they don't need to do both, but they should do a practice of both and see which test is the better fit for them. If it's a good score, you send it. If it's not, you don't. No harm, no foul. But it's worth spending the time to take the initial one and see how they do. So, Vicki, there's a question here, kind of going back to what we were talking about with the state schools. Are you more likely to get money from a school if you are from out of state or from out of region?
So there are public universities, there are private universities. Private universities, I'm making this up. Maybe maybe you're from New Jersey and you're looking at a school in Wyoming, and maybe the school in Wyoming wants to have a more geographically diverse student body. Yeah, they may offer you a merit scholarship to entice you to go there. Typically, the public universities, Penn State, is not known for giving New Yorkers, much merit money. Typically, the public universities, they don't have the endowments, they don't have the funds to be able to give generous merit scholarships to out-of-staters. However, depending on where you live, there are states that do have regional, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Yeah, there's consortiums where you can actually, so West
Right,
Coast.
so in one state, you can pay in-state, in your neighboring state. That's not true. I'm in New York. That's not true in New York or any of our neighboring states, unfortunately. But yeah, there's a New England. I think there's
a West
Southwest.
Coast one. Yep. So California, Oregon, Washington has a.
Right. So it all depends. It depends on the schools that you're applying to, private, public. So I hope that helps.
Right. And also keep in mind, so you guys are in New York. When you think about that, it's cheaper for New Yorkers to go to a SUNY. It's cheaper for Pennsylvania students to go to a Penn State and so forth. So your public schools are going to be cheaper for in-state than for out-of-state. Right?
A lot of the state schools are looking to grow and become more of a national household name. So they are offering in-state tuitions to out-of-state students. Alabama is doing a lot to lure students there. Ohio has the Buckeye Scholarship to bring the rates, in line to an in-state price. I want to say, even with the SUNY did something this year with, they were advertising in local states and offering in-state rates. So, there are all different types of opportunities. And when your children are ready, in 12th grade and applying, there may be more.
Right. And keep in mind, though, that sometimes it works so well when they do that they are now pulling back. So University of Wisconsin, if you want to go to Madison, it's really hard to get in now because so many of out-of-staters were going. And now what's happening is a lot of state legislators are saying, wait, put on the brakes. We need to have more of our in-state students. So the North Carolina schools were always big on that. If you wanted to go to UVA, Virginia Tech, James Madison, UNC Chapel Hill, right? So those schools, there is a cut that they only say you can only take this many out-of-state students, this percentage. So it's sometimes that process has worked too well and it works against the out-of-staters now.
All right, well, that's like University of Michigan. I believe there are different acceptance criteria for in-state versus out-of-state.
Yep. Yeah. So it's interesting to watch it. And if you're really looking for a good public university where the prices are pretty good, and it's actually really good, and nobody thinks to go there except the people around there, University of Iowa, just going to let you in on a little tidbit there. I've been hearing a lot more people going there and getting great education. So just for the record on that. So Vicki, then I think the next big thing was kind of starting to talk to your kids.
So this is something that I'm a huge proponent of. I want you all to speak with your children, speak with your families about the cost of college. It's important for kids to get an understanding of different schools, the different costs, what it looks like after 4 years, why you may need to say no to certain schools versus others. What happens if the children also have plans for graduate school? and, they're going to need to take on their own student loans. What does that all look like over the long term? Um, I want kids to have that financial literacy lesson. Certainly the best place to start is with, mom and dad in terms of, discussing household finances and what's doable. And at the same time, I want the parents to not feel guilty if you have to say no. It's important to think about your own retirements too when you're planning for college. There's this expression that you've probably heard of. I personally can't stand it. And it says that you could take out student loans for college, but you can't take out student loans for retirement. But okay, if mom and dad are taking out student loans for college, you're still going to be paying it off likely in retirement. So, think about that when you're planning financially for college.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse from my perspective is to have a student who gets into a school that they are a perfect fit for, they're all excited for it. And then you get the financial aid package and you realize there is no way that we can afford this.
Right. I've seen it happen too many times. And, May 1st is that deadline. And, the last couple of weeks in April, the kid is crying, the parents feel guilty. That's why I'm saying it's so important to flip it around and how the process works. It's important to, let's figure out the costs ahead of time and find those schools ahead of time. Eleanora and I do this a lot with shared clients where we'll be working together to find the schools that are the best academic, social, and financial fit for the families. It's very important to know those numbers ahead of time.
Yeah, I actually had a family this year, single mom, where the mom said, "I'll just sell my house." No. Right. Like take a deep breath. And I sent her to Vicki. Like, please, that is not the answer. Right. So, because what you're really looking for, those schools that want your kid, because those and your child, look, they may be in high school, it may feel a little young, but it's a time of growth for them and a time of maturity, right? And so high school is all about getting them to start understanding how to adult, to start understanding who they are as a person, their identity, what it is that they want to do. When I work with kids, I tell them, I work with you. I copy mom and or dad because they're paying the bills, right? So they get to see everything. But I work with the student and I use things that only old people use, like email. And what are you doing? Like, because that's what colleges use. And when I have a contract, I have them sign the contract. And when they need to come, like cancel an appointment, I have them cancel the appointment. Why? Because they need to learn to start adulting and be a part of that. And understanding finances is a piece of adulting, right? Being able to budget and to know what makes sense, right? And to have some concept of money. Right. So, I know some of you in this group, you're pretty good with that with your students and you understand that, but it's not an easy space. So, and I think then the kids start to get a sense of, well, all right, I have some, to your point, skin in the game and I have some responsibilities. So some of the things that I also want my kids doing when they're in high school is getting a better understanding of who they are so that when they are preparing to apply to college, it does a couple of things. One, it gives them a sense of the majors that could make sense for them, the extracurriculars, the things they want to do. But it also gives them a chance just in high school to explore, right? And which is really what I want. But I don't want them exploring everything. So I get kids sometimes where their resumes are longer than mine. I've had a lot of jobs over my lifetime. I've been involved with a lot of places, a lot of extracurricular, I have a lot of customers, the community service work, if you will. And for a 17-year-old to have a resume longer than mine is a problem. So what the schools used to say is, oh, we want you to be well-rounded. We want you to, try out all these different things. And they've really come to understand that that's just too much for the students. They, the 17-year-olds that I work with, a lot of them are not sleepy. I'm like, please, you need to go to bed, right? Don't be texting me at 2 a.m. I shut down my phone. You should be asleep. You should be doing only your schoolwork and going to bed. Like, this is crazy. So what I want them to do is to explore, starting in 9th grade, really get out there, start to test the waters with different things. In 10th grade, same thing, trying some new things so that by the time they hit 11th grade, they're going, you know what? I really, really like these business classes that I'm taking. So I'm interested in DECA, which is one of the business programs. Or I'm starting to find out I like science a lot in STEM. So I think I'm going to try working at a lab. Right? Or I love animals. I'm going to volunteer at the local animal shelter and really dive deep. Not every kid is going to get an athletic scholarship, right? There are very few of those to go around, and there are even fewer that are full scholarships. Many of them are divvied up so that you don't get an entire tuition. You might get a portion of it. So, well, you want your kids, if they're good at sport, great. Let them go have fun with that. Let them dive into it. Let them get some leadership experience. Right? They don't need to be on 20 teams, right? They need to do what's good for them. Academics are the most important thing. Having a rigorous course schedule that fits them is important, right? So you don't need 20 APs to get into college. I have a kid this year who didn't even complete his junior year on a traditional campus. He was at an alternative school. He just got into 3 universities this week. Okay, right? There's a school for everybody, but we don't want to exhaust our kids. Oh, I love Eagle Scouts, right? Eagle Scouts for the guys, although some of the girls are now getting Eagle Scouts as well. Most gold award for a lot of my young ladies, right? So Eagle Scout, when we were kids, there were like 3 Eagle Scouts in the country, it felt like. And these days it feels like there's 3 Eagle Scouts per class, per school. That being said, Eagle Scouts still holds a lot of value. And there are some schools that will actually give merit aid for it. Catholic University was one of them that I just saw this year. I thought that was interesting, right? So
Can I jump in with this? Let
Yeah.
me jump in for a second. So I don't know how many of you know, on my Facebook and Instagram page, I'm always sharing different specialized scholarships. I did one for National Pizza Day that was run by Pizza Hut, but it was also Boy Scout Day recently. And I mentioned awards for Eagle Scouts. So you may want to check that out.
Yeah. So the benefit of Eagle Scout is if you can write about what your child learned by doing it, right, then that's a great place to really show that they've got leadership skills, that they went out of their way to find a project that really made sense for them. And no disrespect to the benches of America, because there are lots of lots of benches, it felt like, for a while with Boy Scouts. And I'm really happy to see now that a lot of the projects that my students are working on are much more tailored. I have a kid doing a project for a horse farm, right? They need feeding trials. I've seen kids doing things for the veterans. So I think it's important that they're really finding something that means something to them, because that's the growth.
I'm just want to jump in for something. So Eleanor was saying about how she, the focus of her work is with the students. The focus of my work is with the parents. The parents are, we're talking about finances and paying the bills, but there are some times where we do bring the students in. So we do have talks, we mentioned before about financial literacy, and yeah, I want the kids to have a full understanding of the finances. So, but in the main, Eleanor is with the kids and I'm with the parents.
Right. And I think it's important that it is a dialogue. And I tell my kids all the time, you need to go home and you got to talk to your parents about this, right? So that it's a joint decision, right? It's about your child, right? That your child needs to find the place that makes the most sense for them, but you're still the parent. And so there is that sense of responsibility. You can't just send them off and hope for the best as they're trying to fill out their applications and find the right schools, because honestly, they just don't know. Right? So they do look to you for some guidance. And as much as they may not want to admit it, they know you're often right? Little secret. They don't tell you, they do tell me, right? And so you want to have those dialogues with them, but you don't want to have those dialogues all the time. Set aside some time for them where you can sit down and talk about college with them, and then set aside time just to binge watch, or to go watch a football game or baseball game or soccer game with them, or to take them, out walk for a hike or whatever it is where you don't talk college, right? They need to know that you are there for them and it's not just about school. Because we can get really wrapped up in this. I heard this great phrase the other day, the wine and cheese circuit, right? So parents on the wine and cheese circuit are like, all they're doing is talking college. And I know when I was going through that with my own kids, there got to be a point where I was like, please, I don't ever want to have this conversation with another adult again. And I can only imagine how my kids were feeling, right? So it's just my last tidbit on that piece. And I know, Vicki, you've got one last piece for us too.
The last thing I want to say, colleges are businesses. I'm sure Eleanora has a lot to say about this too. So what do I mean by that? They're looking to, your tuition is their revenue. Their goal is to fill every seat. Sometimes to fill every seat, they may need to award merit scholarships to entice people to go there. Maybe they'll do that. Or maybe there's such short supply, or rather huge demand for a certain school, that there's short supply and not everybody can get in, and the acceptance rates are, minuscule. But yeah, they're businesses, and they want to bring in as much as possible. So no, they may, when they go to make offers, maybe they won't make the best offer. Maybe it's possible to pull some more money from them, request additional funds, and it's possible. Just remember, it's almost like, if you all remember, and now I'm dating myself, the store Sims, an educated consumer is the best customer, and that's true with purchasing a college education too.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting this past year. I had so my last cycle of kids, University of Miami was really hot, no pun intended, right, last year. And so I had, I don't know, like 7 kids decide they wanted to apply to University of Miami. 3 were outright denied. 1 was deferred. 1 got in, and I expected her to get in because she had great scores, great GPA, interesting activities, but she got no money. The second one also got in, but also was really interesting and got a little bit of need-based aid. The third one, who actually had lower score, lower GPA, but was really, really interesting and had a major that was in short supply of students. He got 30 grand. And
right, they want to fill those seats for that major.
Yeah. Yeah. And so don't pick a major just because you think it's going to be the one to get the money, because you can't be an engineering major if you can't do math. Just going to say that, right? But if you have a kid, you should, if you have a kid who's interested in something the school's looking for you, that would be great. All right. So Dana, you're asking, you said you don't like US News and World Report. Which site do you like for information on schools regarding academics and financials? Okay. So there are a couple of websites that understand it's always like Yelp for college. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I happen to love going to a certain restaurant and you might hate it, right? So just always keep that piece. But in terms of some really good data, I go to this actual school website first, right? Because they provide a lot of information there. And you look at their facts and figures, and you can then start to compare, well, these are the kinds of kids they're accepting. This is the profile of students that they accept. They have all the majors are right there. That's a great space. FISC Guide is a really good one in terms of giving you information about a school and telling you some ins and outs that you might not know. It doesn't have every school, but it has a lot of schools. As part of the packages I do at a lot of my kids, if you get one of my bigger packages, you get access into something called College Scoops, which you could buy on your own. College Scoops is a great website where the students actually go video their own schools and talk about them. And then you can also learn about what's around them, right? College Board has some good information as well, right? College Navigator has good information. So, what you want to do are go to the websites that provide data, not rankings, right? That's really the big difference. So I always recommend those kind of websites for that, because you want to understand what the school is all about and doing that. So College Navigator is a good one. That's the one done by the government. So, Vicki, do you have any suggestions for anything there? Yeah, I always say,
No, I always refer people to the website, the school websites. You'll always find more information there than you will,
Yeah, and honestly, if you really want to know about a school, you can always go on tours, call admissions. Admissions officers are willing to talk to you. They're very happy to do that. I find them really interesting. If you guys follow me on Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll see that I talk a lot of times about the books that I read and whatnot. And what I've been finding is a lot of the books that I read, the authors have been really interested in who's reading their books. And a lot of times those authors are college admissions officers, right? And so they have great information and they just want to talk to you and get more and to understand who your child is and help you figure out the school is good for them. So,
yeah, we have it's almost 7:50. Why don't we switch to question and answer? session. I'm sure a lot of people have questions.
And there, one more just came in from, also from Dana. So is there a way to know which majors the colleges are looking to fill seats in? Not really, right?
Mhm.
So it's a matter of, in terms of Miami, the student I was working with, he was there. He was smart enough. This is something you can do. You can ask them, how many majors, how many students are in this major at your school? So you get also a sense of how big the major is, right? Typically, economics, business are going to be the bigger majors. Some of the more specialized things, sociology might be smaller. You can ask them, do you have a lot of freshmen and sophomore in the program relative to your juniors and seniors? And if they tell you no, well, they might be looking for you. If they tell you, oh my God, we are over inundated with freshmen and sophomores, it's probably a hint.
Or if a school starts touting their brand new program, they may be looking to bring people in.
Right. So Stony Brook did that when they were building up their business program. So my son's a little bit older than all of your kids, and they were giving some nice scholarship money, right, to do their business program. And it's a great program. A lot of businesses around here on the island will hire from that program now. Other questions for people coming in? Let's see. Vicki, somebody's asking if they want to get an understanding of, this one came directly to me. If you want to get an understanding of how much a school would cost, like a particular school, is there a way to find out how much a particular school could cost me?
Yeah, it's possible if you go to the school's website that you could find out.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's see what else is coming in. Oh, question about campus visits. So camp and demonstrated interest. So demonstrated interest is an interesting thing. I've been doing a little bit more reading on that again. It used to be really big to go visit college campuses, right? Everybody wanted to be on campus, and that showed that you were interested. You had to check in and do that. And it's just gotten a lot harder to do, right? And I think schools have gotten much more savvy about this and understanding that it's a DEI potential issue, right? An equity issue, because not everybody has the funds to go visit schools. Forget going cross country, sometimes even in the next state, right? I have some kids that don't have the money to do that or the time. So a great way to visit schools is by going to their websites. They have information sessions. They have virtual tours that you can do. You can follow them online on Facebook, on also on LinkedIn. I actually find it interesting. I posted something the other day about a school, and the school reached out to me, said, come on over for a visit. I'm like, oh, look, you're actually following that. I tagged you, right? And invited me over. So, doing those kind of things where you get a good sense of what the school is up to, sign on to their newsletters, sign into their, ask to be on their email distribution list. They know you're interested that way, but you're also getting information, right?
And then what's your recommendation? I always like the unofficial YouTube videos. So you won't get credit for that, but you may get to see a good a good side of the school.
Yeah, and try and find somebody that goes to that school. So I love to connect my students with each other. I've got a student at Tulane, and I've got somebody who's interested in it, and he is like all excited. They're talking to each other. Constantly I'm doing that, because the best way to find out about a school is to talk to an actual student who's there. Okay, so I don't see any other questions coming in. Vicki, do you see anything on your side?
No.
Okay. So Vicki and I will both put our contact information into the chat. I know that you all have you signed up for this, but I will make sure that you have my my information here so you can get to us, and Vicki will do the same. And then Vicki, do we have something we will be giving everybody?
We'll send you a timeline, and we'll send you the 10 points that we made today. So that way, if you have any questions about anything that we discussed, be sure to reach out. Probably also include the video with that too, if you want to refresh.
Mm-hmm.
Let me Let me
And-
send you mine.
And the video, once Vicki is done with it, we always post them also. So always go check our websites. We have a lot of information out there. Vicki and I give a lot of free things away in terms of resources, our blogs. There's always information. If you want to get on our newsletter list, by all means, just reach out. We'll throw you on so that way you can stay up to date with all the latest information. So, I really appreciate everybody coming today to listen to us. It was great to have you. Great questions for us. Vicki, it's always a pleasure.
Yes, always. Eleanor and I have been we've been working together for a good number of years now.
We have indeed. So it's always great. It's nice to see some familiar faces. So thanks you guys for coming on out to listen to us tonight. And if you need us, you know how to find us.
Thanks for coming. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.
Don't be nervous about it. If you need any help, I'm always here.
Thank you.
Take care. I put her in the waiting room.
Okay, and recording?